Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 4 and the final part of the Q&A. So let me get this hat on and get these questions started. All right, first question. Hey Jason, can someone who is doing a slow cut run block periodization with progression every 4th or 5th week, depending on the load, when they have met your strength standards for the intermediate level, or should all programming just be ran when on bulks? Thanks. All right, good question, and we need to differentiate here by what you mean by a cut. Do you mean a cut as in you're at a healthy body fat or maybe slightly above and you just want to lose body fat, or do you mean a cut as in the sort of cut physique competitors and all these fuckboys on the internet want to do? If it's the latter, you're completely fucked. You're not going to make progress. Let's just be honest here. Guys who aren't pinning huge amounts of trim, who are getting down to 10% and lower body fat, getting under 10% body fat, they don't gain strength when they're losing fat anymore. They're very, very, very lucky to hold on to the strength they have, meaning their weights are going to go down, not going to go up. But if you're, 15, 18, 20% body fat and you're doing a slow cut, what you were talking about is perfectly reasonable. All right, you can lose body fat slowly in those ranges while slowly gaining strength and a little bit of muscle. So let's say you try to progress once every block. You could do it every 4th or 5th week, or you could try to progress and add a little bit in each block every 3rd week, a tiny amount of progression. And if you add a tiny amount of progression once every 3 weeks, are you going to gain muscle? Of course you are. You're going to gain a little bit of muscle. Why wouldn't you? It's just a matter of keeping the progression slow enough for you to recover from and keeping the fat loss low enough that you actually gain a little bit of muscle and strength and recomposition slightly instead of losing muscle and strength. And that's all there is to it. Just keep the cut slow enough and the progression really, really small like you're talking about. And yeah, it's possible at the intermediate level to recomposition just slightly on a slow cut if your programming is good and recovery is dead on. It could be done. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I like doing push-pull 4 days a week, and my question was, is it possible to replace squats with sumo deadlifts on my push days? Not really focused on squatting at the moment, just deadlifts. Curious what you think. Thanks. Are you a power lifter who's going to use sumo in competition? If the answer is yes, then that's perfectly fine. Like you're going to do a push-pull meet, so you don't care about squats, fine. But if your goal is to build muscle and strength, I don't recommend the sumo deadlift at all. I don't know why you would do it on a push day. It's still a pull. I'm not a fan of the sumo deadlift for anyone but powerlifters. The conventional deadlift has you move a heavy weight through a longer range of motion, and it gives you more variability in adding range of motion. The conventional deadlift is a superior exercise for overall strength and overall size. Now, you think about the foot spacing and everything else, you're more likely in any environment, I don't care whether it's a football match, an MMA fight, a boxer, anyone, your foot stance is not going to go much beyond shoulder width for any sort of competitive endeavor or anything you would do for strength in the real world. So why would using a sumo stance be the best choice to get stronger for any real world activity? It wouldn't be. It's purely to get stronger in the sumo deadlift in competition. You move oftentimes the same weight through a longer range of motion with a conventional deadlift. It's going to put more muscle on you easier as well. It's the better choice. Now, that being said, if you're just concerned about not squatting, you don't care about squatting, and you want to run a push-pull, you care about your deadlifts and stuff more, that's fine. Then why don't you do more push presses? Push presses have been shown to help tremendously with leg development and leg power. Do a lot more push presses on your press day. That will be fine. That will handle your leg development combined with the conventional deadlifts on the pull days. If it's the fact that you just want to get better at the deadlift, though, rather than the squat, or versus just not wanting to squat, because I understand some people don't want to squat. As long as they're doing other big lifts, you can rotate out one of the major exercises like the squat. I know that sounds like blasphemy, and I've even said to the contrary years ago, but you know what? I've changed my stance on it. I've realized that stance is probably too dogmatic. If it's just because you don't feel like squatting, all right, fine, work in the push press instead. But if your goal is to actually increase your deadlift and that's the only reason you're not squatting, use a form of squat that carries over to the deadlift more, front squat. Do front squats and push presses on your push day, and that will carry over better to your deadlift for you. The front squat is a better deadlift accessory than the back squat is. It will improve your deadlift. So consider doing that instead. Just the other options you have. That's going to be a better choice, I think, for overall development and improving your conventional deadlift than doing the sumo deadlift on the push day. All right, next question. Are training programs that involve block pulls and snatch grip deadlifts essential for novice, late novice lifters, or can novice lifters still gain size and strength on just pulling from the floor? Bizarre question. Why would you struggle to gain size and strength pulling from the floor? Since when has the normal conventional deadlift ever not been a successful size and strength building exercise? One of the greatest exercises there is. Now, that being said, block pulls, I understand why some advanced lifters do block pulls. Not going to get into that. I think there are also alternatives to the block pull that work just as well for what they're trying to do it for, like accommodating resistance. And it doesn't matter that this champion or that champion does block pulls. People want to argue that. It doesn't mean that that's the key to their success. They're still just lifting weights. They're still performing a heavy exercise as an accessory. The accessory might not be the reason they're as good as they are. Just throwing that out there. It could just be that they could have chosen something else and been just as successful. Block pulls are easier to set up for some people due to their equipment than bands and chains are. And I think it's as simple as that. Now, as far as the snatch grip, the same thing goes. Snatch grip deadlifts, you're trying to create a deficit for whatever reason. But you know what? Just do a deficit deadlift. If you're a late novice and you feel like you want to add an accessory to your deadlift to get better at it, you're probably going to get more mileage out of just doing a deficit deadlift on, like, standing on some plates or standing on a 1 to 3 inch platform. You're probably going to get more out of it as far as carryover to your normal deadlift. I'm not saying snatch grip deadlifts can't help, but I don't see that for people who are not going to do the snatch in competition, I don't think it has anything over the normal deficit deadlift. I think deficit deadlifts are going to give you more carryover than the snatch grip deadlift will to your normal deadlift because it makes you more powerful off the floor, the hardest part of the exercise. Snatch grip deadlifts are kind of do the same thing, but they're also for people who are going to perform the snatch. You get better specificity of training because you're also doing pulling with a snatch grip. You need to understand that difference. And again, if you're an Olympic lifter, snatch grip deadlifts make a lot of sense. For someone who's just trying to get bigger and stronger and better at their deadlift, a deficit deadlift would be a better choice. But ultimately, you don't need to stop pulling off the floor, and pulling from the floor normally never needs to be taken out as the primary emphasis. But a novice lifter like that probably doesn't need to really deviate from just a standard deadlift. Even early intermediates probably don't. And if they do, I'm going to lean in the direction of just doing deficit deadlifts as an accessory. All right, next question. If training for hypertrophy does not require training to failure, there comes a point where you can't keep increasing the weight on the bar and have to train to failure on most exercises. Your thoughts? That doesn't make sense at all. What do you mean? That doesn't make any sense. You don't have to train to failure to eventually keep adding weight to the bar. So what if you get to a point to where it eventually takes you an entire year to go from doing 6 reps with 500 pounds to doing 7 reps with 500 pounds? You don't have to hit failure to do that. You just have to keep slowly working on progression. And if you lift 500 pounds for 4 to 5 reps long enough when 6 is your max, and you do enough volume and tonnage with that over the course of months, you will eventually get strong enough to do a 7th rep. And if you can do a 7th rep with 500 pounds, that means you can also probably do an extra rep when you go with 520, 530, whatever it happens to be. It doesn't make sense that you're saying that. Just because it takes longer to add weight or add a rep the more advanced you get, doesn't mean that failure is required to get there. You just have to do enough workload and enough tonnage with less than what you fail with leaving reps in the tank, with using less than your max. If you do enough work with less than your all-out effort, you will eventually get bigger and stronger. All right, that is well understood, well proven. So this idea that you will eventually have to reach failure is absurd. The reason we do that with some stuff for novices is because novices don't always understand how to leave 1 rep in the tank. So we push them to that bleeding edge and then have them back off. All right, that it's just a training method. It's a training tool to help them because they don't know their bodies well. When we're dealing with more advanced lifters, there's no need to do that. They just always leave reps in the tank. And if you do enough tonnage with sub-maximal effort and enough work over the months and years, you will get bigger and stronger. It's just not required. And so again, it doesn't make sense. That's just because it takes longer doesn't mean you have to reach failure. So the point doesn't really make a lot of sense when you really think about it. And if anything, we've seen repeatedly through history from thousands of athletes, bodybuilders, everyone else out there, that it just has never been necessary to train to failure in order to continue to gain size and strength no matter how long you've been training. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.